0345 6060 973. Conservative Party accused of failing to take the issue of Islamophobia seriously by the Muslim Council of Britain. Kind of, in a way, a mirror image, say, of the conversation we had yesterday about the Labour Party and its problems with anti-Semitism. Who knows what we'll be discussing regarding the Lib Dems or the Greens or any other party you care to mention on Monday. It does rather feel as if, in the interests of balance, we should find something for all of the parties to delve into their own ranks and deal with. Abbas in Redbridge. Morning, Abbas.
Hi there, good morning.
Hi.
I always chuckle a little bit when I hear Paul on the radio because he repeats himself. It's like a recording that he just simply plays back every time. Islam's been around for 14 centuries. And a lot of the mess that we're seeing in the last 30 or 40 years. And all the experts, like Professor Robert Page, and so many other intellectuals who've investigated this issue have actually said it's more geopolitical based rather than religious based. Even though these guys do cite religion, nevertheless, their instigator or propagator often for doing what they're doing tends to be because of, geopolitical issues. And on another side, I'd like to say that, when Tony Blair goes to Camp David before the Gulf War, and the aides that were present outside are convinced that, in fact, him and George W. Bush prayed at the chapel there, do I then say that that was a Christian event of killing all those Iraqis? Because that would be ludicrous.
Well, look, I mean, I at the very least rolled my eyes and rolled them pretty far in my head with disgust when I learned of that our Prime Minister had decided to engage in prayer with, at the time, what we thought was the worst president in history. Of course, that's not. Yeah.
Tony Blair actually denied that happened.
Yeah.
There was a very interesting book written about the fate of George W. Bush. I forget the author's name now. And when he spoke to the aides that were present outside, they said that they had no doubt whatsoever that they had actually prayed together in the chapel there together before the Gulf War.
Yeah, and the denial of that was for political reasons. The denial was, as you know, that Tony Blair had been, I think, advised or came to the conclusion that it might be better if such a truth were not to be revealed at the time, for whatever political reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the reality here is that if you want to make these links and say, oh, he did it because he's an evangelical Christian and it was his crusade to go into the Middle East and kill all those people, but that would be a ludicrous thing to say, wouldn't it? But if a Muslim does that, then the link is automatically formed that it must be because he follows Islam, and it must be because he's a Muslim.
What Paul was saying. All right. Tell me, Abbas, about what Paul was saying with regards to the Quran and the various parts that he spoke about. Bearing in mind that myself and Paul are united in that we have no faith whatsoever. We are both atheists, and I have an equally contemptuous view of all faiths, including Islam. So I'm not pro one faith or the other. I think the whole idea is somewhat ridiculous. Is it true what he said about? You heard the call, the things that he said about the contents of the Quran. Did you recognise any or some of that?
He doesn't know what he's talking about, because the Sharia, when it comes to, for example, things like homosexuality, the state has no right whatsoever to impede on anyone's lifestyle if it's within a private setting. The law within Islam for the actual act of homosexuality, and I'm talking about the explicit act.
Yes.
There is only any jurisdiction that would cover any type of crime if it was conducted in public, in front of people. And it would be considered as a very lewd act. And if a man and a woman did it, or a man and a man did it, then yes, there would indeed be some form of punishment.
So you're saying there is nothing in the Quran that prohibits homosexuality, which is what Paul was suggesting.
That's not what I said.
Right, okay.
Within Islam, explicitly, the actual physical act between two men, or that same act between a woman and a man, is forbidden. Is it true? For it to be a crime where the state would become involved, it would have to be conducted in public,
right,
where there would be witnesses, at least 4 witnesses.
What Paul was
have to see the explicit act.
What Paul said, though,
really not going to happen. But
Paul was talking, I'm paraphrasing here, but Paul said something very much along the lines of, he believes that a lot of Muslims would like to see homosexuality recriminalised.
Look, whether Muslims would like to see it criminalised or not criminalised is irrelevant.
Well, it's not, because that's what we're talking about right now.
No, I'll tell you why it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant because we live in a Western country, and in this country, homosexuality is legal. And so, as a Muslim, I have no right whatsoever to restrict anyone else's right to do whatever they do according to the law. That's what Islam tells us to do. And so we have to respect that.
Are you therefore a secularist then? Because that is a secular position. It's perfectly possible to have religious faith but believe that such religion should play no part in the law of the land. Would you say that you're a secularist based on what you've just said?
No, not at all. I don't want to sugarcoat what I'm saying.
No, I'm not asking you to, but I'm just saying that you've just given me a position which makes me think that actually you're in favour of a secular view of the world, which is that you've got your personal faith, but you don't think it should be imposed on anybody.
No, because Islam says that there is no compulsion in religion. In other words, you cannot force anybody to believe what you wish to believe. Even though some of these nutters do all sorts of stupid things, Islam actually prohibits forcing anyone to accept your faith. That the reality is that if you live in a Western country, or any other country for that matter, a non-Muslim country, you have to respect the law of the land. If your religious practices are restricted within that land, then you're told to make hijrah. Hijrah, which means that you leave that land for another land where you're able to practice your faith unimpeded. Now, what Paul is talking about is often a very exaggerated view, a very polarized view of some ignorant, uneducated societies where they practice a very barbaric form of Islam, or not even of Islam, in fact, but a very twisted and misinterpreted version of it. But Islam has been around for 14 centuries. And you only have to look at intellectuals and historians like Karen Armstrong, for example, and you read her works about Islamic history. And if you look at, for example, in Spain, where the Muslims ruled for hundreds of years, Jews, Christians, atheists, all different types of people lived quite harmoniously together.
All right.
In peace.
Abbas, the news approaches, and I've got a lot of calls on this, as you can imagine, but I do want to just bring this back to where we came in, essentially, which is the party political aspect of this, the Conservative Party being told by a prominent woman of the Islamic faith, the former Conservative chairman Saeeda Vazi, telling LBC that the party needs to stop denying they have an issue with Islamophobia. I've no idea whether you're a Conservative supporter or not, Abbas, but or even what your knowledge or interest in that party happens to be. Do you think there is a problem, as far as you can tell, with Islamophobia in the Conservative Party?
Well, if you remember the incident about the Trojan horse incident, and I think it was Michael Gove, wasn't it, who made a huge thing about it in Parliament. And it made it look like it was some huge organisation going on there that was trying to indoctrinate and spread extremism within schools. The reports that I've read that have come out recently have in fact debunked a lot of the things that were being said at that time. And I believe that our politicians are often jumping on the bandwagon because they know it's easy votes, it's quick votes. If you say the right thing, it doesn't have to be correct. It doesn't have to be accurate. As long as it's the right thing in terms of what people will find palatable, then you just say those things to acquire greater votes.
Well, it's interesting. The letter from the Muslim Council of Britain to Brandon Lewis, the current chairman of the Conservative Party, doesn't mention what you've just talked about. It doesn't mention the Trojan horse incident, but it does list 9 examples that they claim are occurrences of Islamophobia from candidates and representatives of the Conservative Party. As I say, they then list 9 examples from the beginning of April. So one a week, essentially, and we can maybe detail some of those as the examples they've given. Listen, Abbas in Redbridge, thank you for that. 0345 6060 973.